Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, translated with commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Adi Leela, Chapter 7. Lord Chaitanya in 5 features. Text 103. Hearing this, the Mayavadi sannyasis became somewhat humble and addressed Caitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayan himself, who they all agreed he was. Report. Mayavadi sannyasis address each other as Narayan. Whenever they see another sannyasi, they offer him respect by calling, Namo Narayan. I offer my respect unto you, Narayan. Although they know perfectly well what kind of Narayan he is. Narayan has 4 hands, but although they are puffed up with the idea of being Narayan, they cannot exhibit more than 2. Since their philosophy declares that Narayan and an ordinary human being are both on the same level, they sometimes use the term Daridra Narayan, poor Narayan, which was invented by a so-called Swami who did not know anything about Vedanta philosophy. Therefore, although all these Mayavadi sannyasis who called themselves Narayan were actually unaware of the position of Narayan, due to their austerities, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enabled them to understand him to be Narayan himself. Lord Chaitanya is certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, appearing as a devotee of Narayan, and thus the Mayavadi sannyasis, understanding that he was directly Narayan himself, whereas they were false puffed-up Narayans, spoke to him as follows. Text 104. Dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, to tell you the truth, we're greatly pleased to hear your words, and furthermore, your bodily features are so pleasing that we feel extraordinary satisfaction in seeing you. Purport. In the Shastras it is said, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhavet Grayamindriyai Sevanmukhe Hi Jivado Swayameva Sparatyada. Translation. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his name, form, qualities, or paraphernalia. But if one renders service unto him, the Lord reveals himself. End translation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-234. Here we can see the effect of the Mayavadi sannyasi's service toward Narayan. Because they offered a little respect to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and because they were pious and actually followed the austere rules and regulations of sannyas, they had some understanding of Vedanta philosophy, and by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could appreciate that he was none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is endowed with all 6 opulences. One of these opulences is his beauty. By his extraordinarily beautiful bodily features, the Mayavadi sannyasis recognized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayan himself. He was not a farcical Narayan, like the Daridra Narayans invented by so-called sannyasis. Text 105. Dear Sir, by your influence, our minds are greatly satisfied, and we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you can speak on Vedanta Sutra. Purport. In this verse, the words Tomara Prabhave, your influence, are very important. Unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Sudha Bhakata Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Translation. Unless one associates with a pure devotee, he cannot be influenced to understand devotional service. End translation. These Mayavadi sannyasis were fortunate enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a devotee, and certainly they were greatly influenced by the Lord. They knew that since a perfectly advanced spiritualist never says anything false, all his words are reasonable and agree with the Vedic version. A highly realized person never says anything that has no meaning. Mayavadi philosophers claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this has no meaning. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never uttered such nonsense. The Mayavadi sannyasis were convinced about his personality, and therefore they wanted to hear from him the purport of the Vedanta philosophy. Text 106. The Lord said, Vedanta philosophy consists of words spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan in the form of Vyasadeva. Purport. Vedanta Sutra, which consists of codes revealing the method of understanding Vedic knowledge, is the concise form of all Vedic knowledge. It begins with the words Atato Brahma Jignasa. Translation. Now is the time to inquire about the Absolute Truth. End translation. The human form of life is especially meant for this purpose, and therefore the Vedanta Sutra very concisely explains the human mission. This is confirmed by the words of the Vayu and Skanda Puranas, which define a sutra as follows. There's a Sanskrit verse here. Translation. A sutra is a code that expresses the essence of all knowledge in a minimum of words. It must be universally applicable and faultless in its linguistic presentation. End translation. Anyone familiar with such sutras must be aware of the Vedanta Sutra, which is well known among scholars by the following different names. 1. Brahma Sutra. 2. Sariraka. 3. Vyasa Sutra. 4. Badanarayan Sutra. 5. Uttara Mimamsa. And 6. Vedanta Darshan. There are 4 chapters, adhyayas, in the Vedanta Sutra, and there are 4 divisions, padas, in each chapter. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra may be referred to as Sodasa Pada, or 16 divisions of codes. The theme of each and every division is fully described in terms of 5 different subject matters, adhikaranas, which are technically called pratigna, hetu, udaharana, upanaya, and nigamana. Every theme must necessarily be explained with reference to pratigna, or a solemn declaration of the purpose of the treatise. The solemn declaration given in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which indicates that this book was written with the solemn declaration to inquire about the Absolute Truth. Similarly, reasons must be expressed, hetu, examples must be given in terms of various facts, udaharana, the theme must gradually be brought nearer for understanding, upanaya, and finally it must be supported by authoritative quotations from the Vedic Shastras, nigama. According to the great dictionary compiler, Hemachandra, also known as Koshakar, Vedanta refers to the purport of the Upanishads and the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. Professor Apte, in his dictionary, describes the Brahmana portion of the Vedas as that portion which states the rules for employment of hymns at various sacrifices and gives detailed explanations of their origin, sometimes with lengthy illustrations in the form of legends and stories. It is distinct from the mantra portion of the Vedas. Hemachandra said that the supplement of the Vedas is called the Vedanta Sutra. Veda means knowledge, and Anta means the end. In other words, proper understanding of the ultimate purpose of the Vedas is called Vedanta knowledge. Such knowledge, as given in the codes of the Vedanta Sutra, must be supported by the Upanishads. According to learned scholars, there are 3 different sources of knowledge which are called Prasthanatraya. According to these scholars, Vedanta is one of such sources, for it presents Vedic knowledge on the basis of logic and sound arguments. In Bhagavad Gita 13.5, the Lord said, Brahma Sutra Padaischaiva Hetu Madbir Vinishitai. Translation: Understanding of the ultimate goal of life is ascertained in the Brahma Sutra by legitimate logic and argument concerning cause and effect. End translation. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra is known as Nyaya Prasthana. The Upanishads are known as Shruti Prasthana, and the Gita, Mahabharata, and Puranas are known as Smriti Prasthana. All scientific knowledge of transcendence must be supported by Shruti, Smriti, and a sound logical base. It is said that both the Vedic knowledge and the supplement of the Vedas called the Sattvata Pancharatra emanated from the breathing of Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra codes were compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, the powerful incarnation of Sri Narayan, although it is sometimes said that they were compiled by a great sage named Apantaratma. Both the Pancharatra and Vedanta Sutra, however, express the same opinions. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore confirms there is no difference in opinion between the two, and he declares that because Vedanta Sutra was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, it may be understood to have emanated from the breathing of Sri Narayan. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that while Vyasadeva was compiling the Vedanta Sutra, 7 of his great saintly contemporaries were also engaged in similar work. These saints were Atreya Rishi, Asmaratya, Audalomi, Karshnajani, Kashakrishna, Jaimini, and Badari. In addition, it is said that Parasari and Karmandi Bhikshu also discussed the Vedanta codes before Vyasadeva. The Vedanta Sutra consists of 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters discuss the relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is known as Sambandha Gyan, or knowledge of the relationship. The 3rd chapter describes how one can act in his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Abhideya Gyan. The relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Lord is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jivara Swarupaya Krishnara Nityadas. The living entity is an eternal servant of the Supreme God. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 20, 108. Therefore, to act in that relationship, one must perform sadhana bhakti, or the prescribed duties of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called abhideya gyan. The fourth chapter describes the result of such devotional service, prayojana jnana. The ultimate goal of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. The words anavriti sabdat in the Vedanta Sutra indicate this ultimate goal. Srila Vyasadeva, the powerful incarnation of Narayan, compiled Vedanta Sutra, and in order to protect it from unauthorized commentaries, he personally composed Srimad Bhagavatam on the instruction of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, as the original commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Besides Srimad Bhagavatam, there are commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra composed by all the major Vaishnavacharyas, and in each of them, devotional service to the Lord is described very explicitly. Only those who follow Shankara's commentary have described Vedanta Sutra in an impersonal way, without reference to Vishnu Bhakti or devotional service to the Lord Vishnu. Generally, people very much appreciate this Sarakabhasya, or impersonal description of the Vedanta Sutra. But all commentaries which are devoid of devotional service to Lord Vishnu must be considered to differ in purpose from the original Vedanta Sutra. In other words, Lord Chaitanya definitely confirmed that the commentaries or bhasyas written by the Vaishnavacharyas on the basis of devotional service to Lord Vishnu, and not the Sarakabhasya of Shankaracharya, give the actual explanation of Vedanta Sutra.